I
Okay.
guess that's my cue.
That was your cue, yeah.
Okay, here we go. I hope you had a great lunch. Sorry for not being able to be there. But I get excellent representation by Yes. Yes knows. Please stand up. No? So anyway, I am Mehmet Zelik. I'm a senior business consultant at the University of Leuven. And the university has been there for since 1425. And we, being Libris, provide library services to the university and associated colleges. We also provide services and consultancy on all Ex Libris products, basically, to external organizations, like, for example, the European Central Bank. And today, we mainly focus on Alma, Rosetta, and Primo. So before we start, let's get on the same plane. So when I talk about AngularJS, it's the Angular that's been used today in the UI, which is version 1.6.3 since the August release. And when we say Angular, that's the future version, also known as Angular 2 or Angular 4. Or yesterday, Angular 5 Beta 7 was released, so one of the future Angulars. And as a side note, I really hope we never have to implement Angular. So the classic UI is the old one, so the previous UI, and UI is the new one, so the current one, basically. What we will do, we will build some components or a component, depending on how much time we have. And we will explore the UI using the web console. We'll look at how we can use hooks, or which hooks to use, which services are available at certain hook points, and how we can find them out. And also see where PRIMO-EXPLORE-DOM, which is a library, a convenience library, can help. We will do this through the web console, so you get a better feeling and understanding of what's going on. And there is also a UI, which makes it a lot easier, and no typing. That's the main focus of every developer. Don't do much, get a lot of return. So let's start the story. One morning, you get into the office, and there's a nice shiny email from the Ex Libris installation team saying, well, your system just got upgraded, and this is the URL if you want to use the UI. And at this, the next email you see is a meeting request from one of your managers saying, well, you know what do we have to do to go from our classic UI to the UI that we have now access to? So you go into this meeting, and they sum up all the UI additions you did using jQuery Primo, of course. And these are a lot, and not all of them are actually meant to be used or meant to be taken along to the next UI. So you go through them, and you start reading, and you start analyzing the whole thing, and you come up with a list that you think of, well, these are the components that we actually need to implement in the next version of the UI, so we can move on. But there is a problem, of course. You have no clue of what AngularJS is, and you don't know how to implement things. So you start Googling, you find all the documents that have been put online, you find all the YouTube presentations that have been done, and so on. And you also start to get some small basic understanding of what Angular actually is, and what you need to do to create these new components. So while you're reading, you understand that an application is actually nothing more than a module. So in Angular, they talk about modules, and an application is a bootstrapped module. So to keep it simple, just high-level explanations. And there is a way to create these modules. Then you need to have these, how do you call them? Braces, not round, but straight or whatever. Things around as a second parameter, and you just created a new Angular module. To retrieve a module, very easy. Just don't supply the second parameter, and you're set. So, and what you also know by watching all the YouTube movies and documentation, that Ex Libris provides two sorts of modules that they bootstrap during the initialization phase, which is the view custom module and the central custom module. But there are a lot of other modules. So in Primo, these are some of them. And they get called during the boot process. So the boot process is a process that consists of two applications. So the first one is the bootstrap application. And this one will start loading the configuration for your specific fit, view ID. And we'll also load and check if certain CSS, logos, resource icons, and so on, and JavaScript and static HTML is available. And we'll start to load all the modules. So once the second application is bootstrapped, it will load some other modules and start rendering. But modules don't get rendered. Components get rendered. So, and that's makes the circle a little bit round, because we wanted to write new components, and this is somehow the beginning of our next story, writing components. So to write components, Ex Libris has come up with a brilliant and simple idea. They've created a primo-explore-dev environment, which is basically a proxy that proxies the central custom, view custom, CSS, images, static pages, what have you not. Everything that can change is being proxied to Primo of your choosing. And they support two methods to work in. So the ECMAScript 5, so the basic JavaScript. All files just get concatenated into a custom JS file. And it's this file that gets rendered. And then there's another way by ES6, my preference, by the way, which uses Browserify. And what they do is they take a main.js file and they transpile it into a custom JS file. So we will have examples of both of them. And these two methods give you the possibility to create your own components and hook them into existing placeholders or components, placeholders within components that end with the after word. So, and the dev environment also allows you to package all your assets and upload them through the back office. That's one way of working with writing components. But the other way is more explorative, to explore, to see what kind of what's happening. Could I ask a question? Could you mute, because it's echoing back? Okay, thank you. So the web console, which is the console within your browser, which is a great place to see where you can put your hooks, and to see which searches are available in the parent component. And of course, maybe the most important thing, it's also where the documentation is, the source code. So without further ado, so I hope the demo gods are in favor of me. This is probably the worst ID in all the bad IDs I had. So let's go to the web console. The web console, where are you? Okay, so this is our Primo environment. It's running through the development environment, as you can see. The web console is the one down here, which you can open by going here and then developer tools, then it pops up. What we can do here is we can look at the source code. So looking at the source code is pretty easy. If you're in Chrome, that's the best place to look at source code. Firefox is also possible, but it's a bit more difficult to understand where to look. So if you have your Primo Explorer application, there is a lib directory, and then you have your components. And within your components, you have all the code that is actually executed by the UI. And here you have one of these modules. And as you can see, if you remember a couple of slides ago, this is one of the modules that gets loaded. So we can just copy this and go to our console and say, well, get me this primo-explore-devenv object. So you get an object. You can't do much with it, but it's nice to look at. So there are a lot of functions that you can use to extend the module. You get the name. You also see which other modules it's using. But that's more or less what you can do with this in the previous version. So before the February release, you could do a lot more with the Angular modules. But I think they're now sandboxed so hard that it's almost impossible to get to them. So that's the modules. But we're not interested in modules. We are interested in creating components. So one way of looking at components is just inspecting the HTML. And here you can see, it's a bit small. And here you can see one of the components that's being rendered. So PRM search bar. It's this one. It's your search box. So the next thing we can do is let me make this bigger. Is we can try to get a handle on this element. And so let's do that. Let's try to find the element. And the name of it was PRM search bar. Better. So it will have a handle on the search bar element. But that's well, that's okay. But you can't do a lot with the element, because Angular has this nice feature that it compiles HTML. So if you would change the DOM elements through the element, Angular would not notice them. But so it's basically a no-go. So what we can do now is we can get the controller of the element, and this we can do it by just taking the element and calling the controller and just specifying the same name as we gave the query selector, and this will give back a controller. So if you look at the controller, and if I just make this a bit bigger, what we see here is all the interesting stuff. So we see here all our services that this controller uses, and we can access them. Yeah. Which is a nice thing. So if you want to create a new component and you want to attach it to some after hook, then it's nice to know which after hook you want to use. And it's also interesting to know which services are available on that after hook. So this is the search bar, but we can do the same thing for the after hook, of course. This in a nutshell, which is a lot of typing, you can also do with the Primo-Explore-DOM library, for example. So if you would do the same thing, so we would call Primo Explore, and we are interested in the components. You can get all the components which are currently rendered on screen. So this list is not static; it's dynamic, depending on the way your URL changes or your components change. This will be updated. So now at the moment there are 37. There are a lot more, of course, but 37 unique components available on screen. So here we can do basically the same thing. We can get the Primo search bar, and let's put it into a variable, and this will return an array of components, and we can get the controller of this element. And this is, as you can see, the same one as at the top of your screen. And as an extra, we can, for example, make it blink. So I'll just do this. So if you would not know where the element was or the component was, you just saw it blink up here. So this Primo-Explore-DOM library, you can install it as we've done now for our environment, but you can also just instantiate it from source, so you don't really need to install it. If you're just going to use it for research purposes, so for knowing what to do, where to hook into, then you don't need to install it. And this is actually pretty easy. So if we just take another Primo environment, which I'm very sure of that they probably have not installed the Primo Explore environment. So I'm taking Lancaster University, if I may, Masoud. Then we can try to do the same things over there. So I'm just going to go into the development console. So there is nothing special. So there is no Primo. So it doesn't know what Primo is. It's not defined. But if we go to the GitHub environment of Primo, there is some documentation down here that says, well, if you copy this piece of code and if you first ask it to load debug information and you instantiate or you run the code, then something magical will happen. You will get this Primo Explorer. It will say which version of Primo you're running. And if you reload, you will get a list of all the components that are currently rendered on screen. And you can filter on these. So you have this search bar. So this was the one that we were looking at. If you click it, you can see all the attributes and services which are available for this component. You can also blink it, of course. Damn. So this is red. You almost don't see it blink, but there is a way around it. So you can just push the component to your console. And if you open your console, it's being pushed to a variable where you can just call the element style and say that the background color needs to be white. For example, you'll see it change to white. And if we blink now, you can actually see it blink. Another nice thing is, so for example, if you're interested in the JWT util service, which contains a link to your session information, you can just click it and you can see which components are actually being used in this service. So this is basically what the library is for, trying to understand what's going on screen, trying to figure out where to put your hooks, which hooks you can use, and if you're using certain hooks, which services are available in these hooks. Because, and it all makes sense, but it's a bit strange, of course, if you search for something, for example, you will get a list of items, and you'll see that there's not just one container, but there are 10 elements on screen, so 10 items on screen, and you can scroll through them. There's also the CSS path here. I forgot to tell about it. And of course, you can look into the item itself. If we see it somewhere. Well, I can't. Where is the item? Here is the item. So it's not highlighted at the moment. But what you could do is you could push this to your console, and you could take this and go to the controller. And you see that this is the second element on your list. Go to your item. Hello. Let's ask. Let's put this in a variable. Here it is. So you can you can ask the PNX data, and for example, print the record ID. Yeah. This is all nice for looking at things, of course. But now let's implement a component, maybe a very interesting component also for the functional people. We will implement a component that will give back the PNX record, and will also give back the original mark or whatever XML record there is. By default, the Primo environment only gives back the PNX record, but there is always a way around of stuff. And when we implemented jQuery Primo, it consisted of two components. One was the JavaScript library, and the other one was a Java library. And this Java library has the possibility to get to the original XML record, only for local records, by the way, so not for Primo Central records or whatever. So how do we do this? We will first, of course, install the development environment, but we will not install the Ex Libris development environment, but a fork of it. And the reason for this is because no, wrong. There is a pull request allowed to import HTML in ES6, which hasn't been pulled yet. So and we need this in our ES6 example. So let's go to command line. First, I'll stop the currently running environment. So what I've done, because it takes a bit of time, I've already downloaded the Primo Explore-Devenv environment from my branch. The links are at the end of the presentation, so you don't need to worry about anything. And what we will do is we will create a directory and unzip the template package. So this has created view code, which is not interesting, so we will rename it. So we will name view code to demo ECMAScript 5. And go in there. So this is the basic setup. You have your CSS, HTML, image, and JavaScript directory. Before we load up our editor, I first want to run npm init -j. What this does is it will create a package.json file, a default one, and we will need this because we are also going to install Primo-EXPLORE-DOM, and we want to save it to the package.json. So once this is done, there will be an extra directory, the node modules directory, and from now on, we can actually run this. So let's run this thing. So the view, well, let me first open my editor, and then go up. So the name of the directory was ES5, and we will run this against our Primo environment. So this thing isn't failing, which is a great start. So the first thing we'll do is we'll create a file. This is an HTML5 environment we are running now. So we'll just create the usual custom module.js file, and we will put Angular module. I will just instantiate the view custom module from here. So that's all that needs to be in here. So the next thing is we will have to create a new JavaScript file. And what you want to do is, so you want to create a button, a PNX and an XML button or link. And down here at the bottom, if you click it, it will show the Primo PNX record and the Primo XML record. So, and we want to add this to the Primo brief results container. So we will use the after hook. And see how this will go. So I'll just name the file. I will just give it the same name as the hook. PRM brief result container after.js. That's where we will put it in. And since we have defined our app in our previous file, here we can just say component PRM brief result container after. So from now on, I will just copy and paste because I see that time is ticking away. So I will create a simple component with a binding to the parent controller and define a controller, and the controller does actually very little. So the only thing it will do is it will get the record ID from the item PNX control record ID. And we will have a template xml.html file, which will be rendered when we have this thing compiled. So now the only thing we need to do is create the HTML file. And I'll just create a new folder here called templates, and a new file being pnx xml.html. And let me copy this. So what this file does, well, it will create a div and two anchor elements. And this is hard-coded because in the development environment, the Primo library directory is not mapped. And what this does is it will call the jQuery Java library with the record ID and show the XML file in a new screen. That's basically it. So let's save this. And if we go here and rerun this, it will create a lot of errors for some reason. What's happening? So missed something somewhere apparently. Okay. That's better. So what it will do now is, let me just rerun this. It will create this custom templates file and the custom file, and it will, as you can see, put it in here. And this is the thing that we will be running. For some reason, it's going crazy. Why is it ending in an endless loop? Why do we love demos? Let me just delete these two. They will be recreated anyway. It keeps running. So, okay, I have a backup. So let's stop this. Go into here. And then so that's a bit better. No, we don't need that one. We need to go here. And this is the library that gets loaded. So if we search for water, for example, and of course, all of other things go wrong now. Whoa. So let me load it up. So now you'll see that there are two links being created here. One is the XML and the other is the PNX. So if I click one, it will open a new screen with the record information. And the same goes for PNX. This is the this is the PNX record, yeah. So you can also change it up here. XML, PNX. So that's how you do it in ECMAScript 5. And I don't know if we have time to do the same thing in ECMAScript 6. So I'm looking at you, Laura.
8 minutes.
8 minutes. It can be done in 8 minutes.
Presenter.
So to do the same thing in ECMAScript 6, this will be a lot of copy pasting. So what we'll do is we'll just get it from the web. So both the ECMAScript 5 and ECMAScript 6 libraries are there. So let's just quickly clone this one. The only difference now is that we have to use ECMAScript 6 here, of course. And we have to use the browserify option because it needs to transpile the ECMAScript 6 code into ECMAScript 5. And then it goes kaboom again. Phi, because this is running. So let's run it over here. Browserify. Now, if we look at the code, the difference here is that there is a main file. Don't forget this stuff. That's just for Primo-Explore-DOM. And here, if you look at these things, so you do this actually you do the same thing. You create a module, create component, but the configuration is not here. It's loaded from this file. And if you look at the PNX XML file, you'll see that this is an ECMAScript 6 file. Instead of adding a variable to the controller, you just create a function, a getter function, and you return exactly the same thing. You define your bindings, your controller, and your template. And once this gets instantiated, you should have more or less the same effect. The only big difference here is that you can straight import the HTML file into your JavaScript, which keeps everything more or less together. So running this should give the same result. And that's how things go in ECMAScript 6. So there's no big magic. So, but the extra thing you get with Primo-Explore-DOM is that besides having access to the components, you also have access to the user object and the view object. So looking at the user object at the moment, so I'm not logged in, you get access to these variables, attributes. You can also check if he's logged in or if he's on campus, if he has fines, if he has loans. So for example, if I try to log in, and if you would do the same thing, you see that the object is filled in now, and I apparently have fines. Yeah. So you can use this to create other objects or other tools, like we did, for example. If we go to our Primo environment, and it won't notice. So if we sign in, it will show a message saying, well, you have one fine, do you want to pay it? Or just ignore it. So if you click on pay it, you will go to our Pay My Fine service, and Yes can tell you a lot more about it. But also in the My Account, you get a button saying pay your fines here. And this is not translated. Okay. This is more or less what I wanted to show you. There is a lot more that you can do with the Primo-Explore-DOM environment besides exploring. I would ask you to go to the website and have a look, so you can have access to the user, the records, the facets, and so on and so on. Are there any questions?
I can try to get to that URL which will work for me.
Someone mentioned having trouble getting to that URL, the Primo-Explore-Dev.
Could you please repeat the question a bit closer to the laptop? I'm sorry, but there's a lot of echo.
Turn the mic off. Turn the mic off.
Turn the mic off.
Turn the mic
Okay.
Oh, now it says Q&A session is closed. Before it said you have to be a member of his organization, I think.
Oh.
Oh, okay. You're talking about the URL up at the top?
Ah, yeah, okay. No, I've enabled it now, so I forgot to say. So now you can ask questions here if you want to. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we we apparently have an online audience as well as the people in this room. So it's taking questions from them as well as us. So if we have any questions in this room, I think we might have time for one while the next presenter is coming up. Yes.
Hi, Mehmet. To get access to the XML file via the jQuery proxy, I guess, is this possible on direct environments only, or is it possible for hosted instances as well? So
I would say try it. Normally, you should be able to do that. So if Ex Libris is very kind to have taken this library under their wings, and they're normally installing it, as far as I know. So I'm now looking at Guy and the other Ex Libris people. But normally, yes. But I would say try.
okay, and to have this
He's starting.
additional, we at the moment need to install it locally. But do you know if Ex Libris is willing to import it to the general package? And is there any timeline known to you?
I didn't understand the question, but if you mean, is this available somewhere else? Then let's see. We have one search open here from Lancaster. What was the idea of? Let me see. PRM controller item. But this is the idea of the record. Let's see if we can display it. Where is it? So if we take this and then go here, do some copy pasting. Oh. So this should result in the PNX record. If our session didn't time out, there you go. So it works.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think this is all we have time for. Now,
Thanks, Mehmet.
Yeah.
let's check and see if there's a possibility.
I've got to cut you off, though.
Okay. One more thing. So I'll leave the ask a question open. So if you have questions, then I'll see them appear here and try to answer as best as I can.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mehmet.
Okay, and I'll just mention that I believe that this is being broadcast on YouTube also, and